Hello everyone, I Piyush Goyal welcome you to Voxel's YouTube channel. So in this video we will discuss about Cambridge IELTS Academic Book 19 Test 1 Reading Passage 2. We have already seen how to solve reading passage 1 in the previous video, and in this video we will see how to solve this particular passage. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So first what we will do is we will read the heading of the paragraph. The pirates of the ancient Mediterranean. So we know there is something about the mention of pirates. So we all know what pirates are. They were people who robbed other people like on sea. Okay, they had ships like you might have seen movies like Pirates of the Caribbean or any other movie of that sort. So we will know about how these pirates were, or maybe there is mention of why they started looting other people, or what kind of people became pirates. Maybe there is such kind of information, maybe there is not. It will depend on the paragraph, but we know what to expect in this particular paragraph. So if you follow all our reading videos closely, you will understand how to solve readings without making a lot of errors. In fact, without making any errors, you will be able to solve all the questions correctly. Because in exams, doesn't matter if you have solved 1000 readings or if you have solved only 10 or 20 readings. So you will get a new reading, the questions will be like completely new, and you would not have seen those questions beforehand, or may not have read that passage or about that topic beforehand, but still you can get your desired band scores, maybe an 8 or even 9, if you solve the readings the way we told you in Voxel. Okay, so now first what we'll do, after reading the passage, heading of the passage, we will go directly to the first set of questions. So this is our first set of the questions, question number 14 to 19. So we know this has 7 paragraphs A to G, and we have to find which paragraph contains the following information, and we have to write the correct letter A to G in the boxes 14 to 19 on our answer sheet. So this is very important. We may use any letter more than once. So if this particular sort of information is given to you, then 99% of the time you should be sure that there will be repetition of a particular of a particular letter, but 1% chance is that there may not be any particular repetition, but we will assume in our head that the repetition is bound to happen, otherwise they may not have given us such kind of instruction. But it doesn't automatically like guarantees there will be repetition always, but like you can say almost 99.99% of the time there will be some sort of repetition. So first what will we do is, for solving these types of questions, we will read all the questions and underline our any or all keywords. So in the first question, a reference to denial of involvement in piracy. So there will be a reference, a mention, but about what? Denial of the involvement in piracy. So there may be an investigation ongoing, or there may be some sort of cases ongoing, and the particular person or particular group of people denied their involvement in piracy. Okay, meaning to say they said no about something about their involvement. 15th, details of how a campaign to eradicate piracy was carried out. So a particular paragraph in which we were given how something happened, basically campaign to eradicate piracy was carried out. Eradicate in simpler terms means eliminate, remove. So so in this particular paragraph they have mentioned how they wanted to eliminate or wipe out pirates. 16th, a mention of the circumstances in which states in the ancient world would make use of pirates. So there will be a mention of circumstances, there may be some situations in which states, meaning to say governments, but of ancient world, used pirates. Like in the case of emergencies or in some certain situations, states, meaning to say authorities, governments, if it's the ancient world, maybe rurals, kings, queens, maybe some sort of these kind of words may be used. A reference to how people today commonly view pirates. So there will be a reference on how people today view pirates. Basically, what is the common view of pirates? Like we see in movies, they have bandage on one eye, there's a crew of 15 to 20 misfits, things like that. There may be mention of that particular thing. 18th, an explanation of how some people were encouraged not to return to piracy. So there will be some explanation like what steps were involved so that people were encouraged to not to return to piracy, so that they should not become pirates again. So maybe so this particular question means there were pirates, so some things happened or something happened, or they may have been convinced in some way or the other to leave piracy, and then they were given some sort of conditions or some sort of incentives so they do not return to piracy. Okay. 19th, a mention of the need for many sailing vessels to stay relatively close to land. So if there is mention for sailing vessels, in other words ships, to stay relatively close to land, meaning to say they didn't wander too far into the sea, so too far away from land. So where there is mention that ships were relatively close to like coastlines, or they stayed near water bodies or near ports, something like that, we will know this is the answer to that particular question. So now how to solve these questions? So you have like two methods, either start from the paragraph A, then B, C, D. So when you read paragraph A, after reading or understanding the paragraph properly, go through each and every question. See if there is any keywords in that particular paragraph. If you find one or two, mark the answers. If you don't, then we will continue with paragraph B, and then we will continue up until G with this particular method until all questions are solved. Another method is that you can start with the shortest paragraph. So let's see, G, F, E is a bit bigger than F and G. D, C is the smallest one, I believe. A. So almost all paragraphs are of equal length apart from C, which is I think the shortest, and E I think is the longest. So we start from the beginning so that we can have some sort of image what kind of things we are going to read about. So first paragraph, second thing, we will read carefully because we don't know if the information is in the paragraph or not. So it may take some time for me to make you understand how to read paragraphs, but once you are accustomed to it, your time will reduce significantly. So first paragraph, when one mentions pirates, an image springs to most people's minds, a crew of misfits, daredevils and adventurers in command of a tall sailing ship in the Caribbean Sea. So here, if you are able to understand it, you will be able to find a particular question in it. So when one mentions pirates, so when there is a mention of pirate or reference of pirates, so an image springs to most people's minds. Like there is an image in most people's mind that like pops up, like it is a crew of misfits or daredevils or adventurers in command of a tall sailing ship in the Caribbean Sea. Yet from the 1st to the 3rd millennial BCE, thousands of years before the swashbucklers began spreading fear across the Caribbean, pirates prowled the Mediterranean, raiding merchant ships and threatening vital trade routes. So here is the mention of what pirates did and who were there before the pirates. However, despite all efforts and the might of various ancient states, piracy could not be stopped. So here is the mention that various states did all they could, but they were not able to stop the piracy. The situation remained unchanged for thousands of years. Only when the pirates directly threatened the interests of ancient Rome did the Roman Republic organize a massive fleet to eliminate piracy. So there is something about eliminating piracy. So what is written here is the situation remained unchanged and for thousands of years. Only when they threatened by Rome's like a trade or Rome's economy, they organized a massive fleet mean group of ships to eliminate piracy. Under the command of Roman General Pompey, Rome eradicated piracy, transforming the Mediterranean into Mare Nostrum, our sea. So they eradicated piracy under this particular captain or general. So we will read the questions now. 14th, a reference of denial of involvement in piracy. There is no mention of this particular thing. Details of how a campaign to eradicate piracy was carried out. Now what students will do is they will say eradicate piracy, they will say eradicated piracy, they will say A option, but this is not our answer. The reason being here it is just mentioned Roman Empire organized a massive fleet and this particular general eradicated piracy, but there is no mention of how it was carried out, okay, how the campaign was carried out, okay, there is no mention of that. But if let's just say for argument's sake, if you want to like write A because you are not sure if you are going to find it in another paragraph or maybe there is a repetition of this, you can mark A here. So after that when you will read it in another paragraph, you can change your answer. Okay, you can do also like that. 16th, a mention of the circumstances in which ancient state would make use of pirates. There is no mention of this particular statement. 17th, a reference of how people today commonly view pirates. So there is a mention of that. Today means nowadays, present. So here is the mention when one mentions, so as that just means present, and image springs, again simple present. So this is how people imagine pirates. So we know the answer to our 17th is written in paragraph A. 18th, an explanation of how some peoples were encouraged to not to return to piracy. So there is no mention of that. A mention of the need for many sailing vessels to stay relatively close to land. There is no mention of this also. So we know our 17th is A. Let's just say for argument's sake, if you want to mark 15th as A, you can mark. So if I know this is not the answer, I have already told you why. So when you will find out the answer to this particular paragraph, you will be able to easily differentiate why this particular answer is not the answer. So moving on to the B paragraph. Although piracy in the Mediterranean is first recorded in ancient Egypt during the regions of Pharaoh Amenhotep, so sorry if I am not pronouncing it correctly, the third, from 1390 to 1353 BCE, it is reasonable to assume it predated this powerful civilization. So they are saying that piracy is like before this Egyptian civilization of this particular person. This is partly due to the great importance of Mediterranean held at this time and partly due to its geography. So this is because some part was because of this particular importance of this particular place and because of its geography. While the Mediterranean region is predominantly fertile, so this region is fertile, some parts are rugged and hilly, even mountainous. So they are saying that the particular region is fertile, but not all. Some parts are rugged and hilly, and even they are mountainous. So in ancient times, the inhabitants of these areas relied heavily on marine resources. So the inhabitants of this particular area, they depended on marine resources, okay, including fish and salt. Most had their own boats, possessed good seafaring skills and unsurpassed knowledge of the local coastline and sailing routes. So they have their own boats They possessed good seafaring skills and unsurpassed knowledge of local coastline and sailing routes. Thus, it is not surprising that during hardship, these men turned to piracy. So these people became pirates. So this is the mention of the people became pirates because during hardships they are not able to, like, just say, get good crops, or because they are living in mountainous areas they are not able to meet the daily needs, so they turn to piracy. Geography itself further benefited the pirates, with the numerous coves along the coast providing places for them to hide their boats and strike undetected. Before the invention of ocean-going carvels, so carvels are small and highly maneuverable sailing ship developed by the Portuguese, so these are the type of ships. In the 15th century, ships could not easily cross long distances over open water. So before this particular ship, they were not able to cross long distances over open water. Thus, in the ancient world, most were restricted to a few well-known navigable routes that followed the coastline. So most of the ships remained closed to coastline. So this is one of our answers if you are able to remember the questions. Caught in a trap, a slow merchant ship laden with goods had no other option but to surrender. So once the ship laden with, meaning to say filled with goods, they were like surrounded by pirates, they didn't have any other option but to surrender. In addition, knowledge of the local area helped pirates to avoid retaliation once a state fleet arrived. So they can, because of their knowledge, they like ducked all these negatives. So let's just say a 14th question, a reference to the denial of involvement in piracy. There is no such kind of mention in this particular question. Details of how campaign to eradicate piracy was carried out. There is no mention of eradicating piracy. A mention of circumstances in which states in the ancient world would make use of pirates. There is no mention of that either. An explanation of how some people were encouraged not to return to piracy. There is no mention of that. A mention of the need for many sailing vessels to stay relatively close to land. So there is the mention for the need. So what is the need? Because they were not able to cross open waters over long distances. So this is mentioned here clearly. So they could not easily cross long distance over open waters. Okay, so they needed to, or they were restricted to a few well-known navigable routes that followed the coastline. So coastline meaning to say they were like close to land, in other words. So our answer to this should be B. Hope it is clear. Moving on to the C paragraph. Sorry about that. One should also add that it was not unknown in the first and second millennia BCE for the governments to resort to pirate services. So it is clearly mentioned here, governments resort to pirate services. Resort to pirate services in simpler term means government took help of pirates, especially during wartime circumstances, wartime, employing their skills and numbers against their opponents. A pirate fleet would serve in the first wave of attack, preparing the way for the navy. Some of the regions were known for providing safe harbors to pirates, who in return boosted the local economy. So pirates boosted the economy. So government and criminals, they go hand in hand, not in only today's world, but like as far as the humans like existed on this particular earth, or the government system existed on this particular earth, this just refers to that. So first question, a reference to denial. There is no mention of denial. There is no mention of eradicating. In fact, there is mention of correlation. So mention of circumstances, meaning to say wartime, in which states, governments use of pirates. So our answer to this question should be C. Okay, we will read the other explanation of how some people encourage not to return to piracy. There is no mention of this. So we will move forward to the D paragraph. Okay, sorry about that. We will move to the D paragraph. The first known record of a named group of Mediterranean pirates made during the rule of ancient Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten, sorry about that name if I am not pronouncing it correctly, 1353 to 1336 BCE was Armana Elater. So this is the name, this is the recorded name of pirates in the Mediterranean Sea. So during this particular rulers period, sorry, these were extracts of diplomatic correspondence between the pharaoh and his allies and covered many pressing issues including piracy. So these were the extract, meaning to say snippets from the correspondence between this particular person and his allies, meaning to say friends or companions, and it covered many pressing issues, main issues including piracy. It seems that the pharaoh was troubled by two distinct pirate groups. So this particular king was troubled by these two groups, the Leuca and the Sheridan. Despite the Egyptian fleet's best efforts, the pirates continued to cause substantial disruption to regional commerce. So commerce means business. In the latter, the king of Elysia, modern Cyprus, rejected Akhenaten's claims of a connection with the Leuca. So here there is reference that one particular person, in this case king of Elysia, Cyprus, he rejected, or mean to say denied, this particular claim of connection with the Leuca, and we know what this particular Leuca refers to. This Leuca refers to the name of the group or group of pirates. Okay, pirate group. So this particular pirate group is named Leuca. So this particular person denied or rejected the claim that he or she had connection with this king, meaning to say he, that he has a connection with this particular group. So this is the last sentence we will read and move forward. The king assured Akhenaten he was prepared to punish any of his subjects involved in piracy, and he also assured, or he even assured the king that he was prepared to do whatever needed to remove piracy. So we have known the reference to denial. So there was a reference of denial. Okay, so our answer to this will be D. We will read this. The details of how campaign to eradicate piracy was carried out, there is no mention of this. And how some people were not encouraged not to return to piracy, there is no mention of this. So we will read E paragraph now. The ancient Greeks' world's experience of piracy was different from Egyptian rulers. So now we are talking about ancient Greek, how they experienced piracy and how their experience was different from Egyptian rulers. While Egypt's power was land-based, the ancient Greeks relied on Mediterranean in almost all aspects of life. So Egypt relied on land, but Greeks, they relied on Mediterranean, from trade to warfare. Interestingly, in his works of the Iliad and Odyssey, the ancient Greek writer Homer not only condones but praises the lifestyles and action of pirates. So they are openly praising pirates. They are not only like welcoming pirates, they are praising pirates also, the opinion, and they have written books on praising pirates. So works, or this is the name of the book. In his works, the Iliad and Odyssey, this particular person is praising pirates. The opinion remained unchanged in the following centuries. So the ancient Greek historian, sorry about this, I don't know how to pronounce it, Thucydides, okay, sorry about that, for instance, glorified pirates daring attacks on ships or even cities. So they are glorifying pirates, whether they are attacking ships or even cities, they are being glorified. For Greeks, piracy was a part of everyday life. For them, it was a part of their everyday life. Even high-ranking members of the state were not beyond engaging in such activity. So even the government officials were taking part in piracy. According to Greek orator Demosthenes, so this is the name of the person, I will just mark it. 355 BCE, Athenian ambassadors made a detour from their official travel to capture a ship sailing from Egypt, taking wealth found on board for themselves. So this particular Athenian ambassador, so he made a detour from the official tour and tried to capture ship or for to capture ship of Egypt and taking wealth for themselves. The Greeks' liberal approach towards piracy does not mean they always tolerated it. So although the Greeks were liberal, quite soft towards piracy, but they not always tolerated it. But attempts to curtail piracy were hampered by the large number of pirates operating in the Mediterranean. But they couldn't do so because of the large number of pirates. They were not able to put stop to this. So our question, campaign to eradicate piracy was carried out. There was no campaign to eradicate piracy in this particular paragraph. How some people were encouraged or to, there is no mention of that. So we do not have any answer in this particular paragraph. Now we will read F paragraph. Sorry about that. The rising power of ancient Rome required the Roman Republic to deal with piracy. Now we are dealing with piracy here in the Mediterranean. While piracy was a serious issue for the Republic, Rome profited greatly from its existence. So although it was a serious issue, but Rome profited greatly from the existence of pirates. Pirate raids provided a steady source of slaves, because when they were raiding pirates or people involved in piracy, they are getting steady source of slaves, essential for Rome's agriculture and mining industry. So they were using them in agriculture, people in agriculture and mining industries. But this arrangement could work only while the pirates left Roman interests alone. But it only could work when the pirates didn't interfere in Rome's businesses. Pirate attacks on grain ships, which were essential to Roman citizens, led to angry voices in the Senate demanding the punishment of the culprits. So what happened was, pirate attacked grain ships, like ships transferring or ships moving grain from one part to another part of the world or Rome. So they attacked those ships, maybe looted those ships. So that led to angry voices in the Senate demanding the punishment for the culprits. Rome, however, did nothing further encouraging piracy, but they did nothing to eradicate them, so it encouraged them further. By the 1st century BCE, emboldened pirates kidnapped prominent Roman dignitaries, asking for a large ransom to be paid. So what happened was, they got so encouraged or they got so bold that they started kidnapping like Roman officials and asking ransom in return for their safe return. Their most famous hostage was none other than Julius Caesar, captured in 75 BCE. So this is their most famous capture. Okay. Details of, no, there was no mention of campaign to eradicate piracy, so obviously should be in G, and there is no mention of this, so it should be in G. So we can easily mention G and G here, but we will not do this. We will read it because we have to understand how the answer is there. But in the paper you can easily mark G, because if you are sure that the answer is not in the above like 6 paragraphs, so it has to be in this particular, but we will read it together to understand it. By now, Rome was well aware that pirates had outlived their usefulness. So by now meaning to say not today, but by whatever the year was mentioned in that particular paragraph. The time had come for the concentrated action. So now they were thinking of taking action. In 67 BCE, a new law granted Pompey vast funds to combat Mediterranean menace. So now they are trying to combat the pirates. Taking personal command, Pompey divided the entire Mediterranean into 13 districts, assigning a fleet and commander to each. After cleansing one district of pirates, the fleet would join another in the next district. So this is how their campaign started to eliminate or eradicate pirates. So from here to here, the process continued until the entire Mediterranean was free of pirates. So this is how the entire campaign went through. So this is how campaign to eradicate this was carried out, how it was carried out. This particular person divided Mediterranean into 13 districts, assigning a fleet and commander to each. So after cleansing one district of pirates, fleet would join the other next district, and so the number would increase, and they would repeat the process until every pirate was eliminated. So our answer to this particular question is G. Okay, we will read for this particular thing. Although thousands of pirates died at the hands of Pompey's troops, as a long-term solution to the problem, many more were offered. Land in fertile areas located far from sea. Instead of maritime menace, Rome got productive farmers that further boosted in its economy. So what they were given offered land in fertile areas located far from the sea. So it is their long-term solution to the problem. So that they do not return to piracy again, they gave land so they can earn their livelihood easily. So we know its answer should be G. So I hope it is clear how to solve these questions. So moving to the next set of questions. So here we have to write two letters A to E and we have to write in 2021. So this is our question. Which two of the following statements does the writer make about the inhabitants of the Mediterranean region in the ancient world? So we know where we have read Mediterranean, we have read Mediterranean inhabitants here. So here is the talk about Mediterranean region and its inhabitants. Okay, now we will read our, we will read our question. Now what we will do, we will read all the options. Okay, we do not need to go back before reading the question. I am just trying to show you how reading carefully can help you locate answer more quickly. First option, they often use stolen vessels to carry out pirate attacks. So what they used stolen vessels to carry out pirate attacks. So if my memory serves me correctly, okay, if my memory is not betraying me, I have not read stolen vessels being used to carry out pirate attacks, but I will read it again just in case. B option, they managed to escape capture by authorities because they knew area so well. So they managed to escape the capture because they knew the area so well. Yes, they have unsurpassed knowledge of the local coastline, or they also said that the geography benefited because they knew the area very well. They paid for information about the route merchant ships would take. I have not read like they were paying something for the information. D, they depended more on the sea for their livelihood than on farming. Okay, so we have read something about like rugged areas, mountainous areas. Okay, let's see what was that. They stored many of the goods taken in pirates in coves along the coastline. So there was mention of coves along the coastline, but I'm not sure whether they stored something there or not, whether there was a mention of this or not. Okay, we will read this paragraph now. Okay, while the Mediterranean region is predominantly fertile, some parts are rugged and hilly and even mountainous. In the ancient times, so here it is a locator word. So in the question it was also mentioned in the ancient world. In the ancient times, inhabitants of these areas relied heavily on marine resources. So they relied heavily on marine resources including fish and salt. So from this we can easily say this will be our answer D. Let's just say if I do this, can I make it green? Yes, this will be our answer because they depended on marine life. After that, most had their own boats, so they had their own boats, so they didn't use stolen vessels. So this option is eliminated. Possessed good seafaring skills and unsurpassed knowledge of the local coastline and sailing routes. Thus, it is not surprising during the hardship these men turned to piracy. Geography itself further benefited the pirates with the numerous coves along the coast providing place for them to hide their boats. So they are using coves to hide their boats and strike undetected. They are not using coves to store the stolen goods. They are using coves to hide boats. So obviously it cannot be our answer. So they didn't use the stolen vessels also. So they escaped because they had good knowledge. So this cannot be our answer. No mention of this. This cannot be our answer, and this too cannot be our answer. Hope it is clear. Okay, moving on to the next question. Again we have to pick the two words, two letters from this. Which two of the following statement does the writer make about piracy and ancient Greece? So wherever it was mentioned Greece in the particular passage, we will read that particular passage. First option, the state estimated that very few people were involved in piracy. So whatever the question says, they said there were very few people in piracy, but if my memory serves me correctly, they were not able to curb piracy because of a large number of people involved in piracy. So right off the bat I can eliminate this particular option. I can eliminate this particular option. B, attitude toward piracy changed shortly after the Iliad and Odyssey were written. So there was mention of this particular book. I have to now read it again. Important officials were known to occasionally take part in piracy. Yes, if my memory serves me correctly, there were mentioned that their official took detour and they went to loot the Egyptian ship for themselves. Sorry. Every citizen regarded pirate attacks on cities as unacceptable. I don't think so there is any mention of that. Let me mark it as red, but if it is the answer, I am not so sure about that right now, so I will read this particular paragraph. So but if it is the answer, we will mark it. Okay, correct. A favorable view of piracy is evident in certain Greek texts. So if I remember correctly, in this particular book, Odyssey and the Iliad, there were praises. They were condoning pirates, so they were favorable view of the piracy. So but I will read the paragraph for the better, so that I don't make any mistake. Here is this E paragraph, ancient Greek. Okay, so we will read it together. Experience of piracy was different from the Egyptian rulers. While Egypt's power was land-based, the ancient Greeks relied on Mediterranean in almost all aspects of life, from trade to warfare. Interestingly, in his works, so works means books, literature, the Iliad and Odyssey, the ancient Greek writer Homer not only condones but praises the lifestyle of pirates. So there was favorable view for the pirates. The opinion remained unchanged in the following centuries. The ancient Greek historian, for instance, glorified pirates. So even the historian were glorifying pirates and even attacks on cities and ships. For Greeks, piracy was part of everyday life, so it was a favorable view. Okay, they were not condoning it. They were not condemning it. They were condoning it. Even high-ranking members of the state were not beyond engaging in such activities. So from here information it is clear. So this and the C and E option are our answer. Moving on to the questions number 24 to 26. So first we will read the instruction words. So it is very important to note that we have to write one word and one word only. We cannot write more than one word. If you write two words, even if one word is correct out of those two words, your answers will still be marked incorrect. So let's start. Ancient Rome and piracy. Okay, piracy was an issue in ancient Rome, so we have to find answers in the paragraph where ancient Rome is written. had to deal with it, but it also brought some benefits for Rome. Okay, for example, pirates supplied slaves that were important for Rome's industry. So there is a mention of slaves as we have read earlier, and something about industries. However, so although they had some benefits, it will be like some negatives of that. However, attacks on vessels transporting resulted in calls for dash for the pirates responsible. So vessels, meaning to say ships, they were like transporting something, so there should be there will be name of some like mineral or some sort of food or thing like that, resulted in, meaning to say led to calls for dash for the pirates responsible. So obviously if they are attacking something, or if they are looting, or if they were looting something in fact, so there must be calls for like their like punishment or for their heads, okay, something like that, for the pirates responsible. So let's see Rome. So here is ancient Rome. So the rising power of ancient Rome required the Roman Republic to deal with the piracy in the Mediterranean. While piracy was a serious issue for the Republic, Rome profited greatly from its existence. Pirate raids provided a steady source of slaves essential for Rome's agriculture and mining industry. So there is a mention of slaves and industries. Okay. But this arrangement could work only while the pirates left Roman interests alone. Pirates attacks on green ships. So ships, vessels, they were attacking on green ships. So here our answer should be green. Okay. Now we will read further. Resulted in calls for dash for the pirates responsible. Okay, which were essential to Roman civil citizens, led to angry voices. So meaning to say resulted in angry voices in the Senate demanding punishments of the culprits. So they culprits, meaning to say pirates. So they were demanding punishment. So calling for punishment. So calls for punishment. So here we will write punishment. Okay, let me reduce this size. Okay, punishment. Now last question. Nevertheless, piracy continued, with some pirates demanding a dash of the Roman officials they captured. So they were demanding something. There should be a noun because this is an article A, so there should be a singular word here, of the Roman officials they captured. Let's see what they were demanding. Okay, Rome however did nothing further encouraging piracy. By the 1st century BCE, emboldened pirates kidnapped prominent Roman dignitaries, meaning to say officials, asking for a large ransom to be paid. So they were asking for a large ransom. So we cannot write two words, so we cannot write a large ransom, so only one word out of that which would make sense here will be ransom. Okay, so this is how you should solve your reading every time, and you will get your correct answers without fail. So first we will check our answers. D, G, C, A, G, B. Okay, D, G, C, A, G, B. Then B, D, C, E. B, D, C, E, grain, punishment, ransom, grain, punishment, ransom. So this is how you should solve your reading. I hope it is clear. If not, you can rewatch the video, or you should rewatch that particular part of the video that is not clear. So we have uploaded more such videos on our channel. You can watch it, and if you want our help, I'm gonna leave our website link in the description. You can visit us. you can mail us there and we will be happy to help you. Even if you want band 7 or higher in your speaking or writing, or maybe listening or reading, we will be happy to help you. We have helped numerous students, various students achieving these kind of scores and securing their dream visa or PR. And if you also want to fulfill your dreams, contact us in the link given in the description. So I will see you in the next video. Till then, take care and goodbye.